Hello and welcome to this episode of the Health Bridge podcast. I'm your host, Holly B. Today I'm speaking with Elizabeth Dall. Elizabeth is a certified women's nutrition coach, a food freedom expert, and a behavior change coach who specializes in helping women break free from the diet cycle, make peace with food, and create sustainable, healthy habits. With a holistic approach rooted in mindset shifts, self compassion, and practical strategies, she empowers women to stop overeating, embrace their bodies, and achieve their health goals without guilt, restriction, or dieting. As a host of the Women of Wellness podcast, Elizabeth shares expert insights, actionable tools, and inspiring stories to support women on their wellness journeys. Her coaching programs and resources are designed to help women build consistency, overcome challenges, and create lasting change so they can feel confident, healthy, and free in their relationship with food and their bodies. In this conversation with Elizabeth, we really dive into the root of how to begin and sustain new healthy habits, and that everything that you do with your health journey, it all comes down to starting with the relationship that you currently have with your body. So we talk a lot about how to create and nurture a positive relationship with yourself, with your body, and how do you build on that. We also get into the understanding and the recognition and the acceptance of the fact that your journey may very well look different than anybody else's, and that is okay. In other words, we shouldn't be comparing and contrasting our journey to anybody else's because we are a unique individual on a unique path. We also talk a lot about creating mindfulness habits. So when it comes to your daily choices and your daily routines, how can we create mindfulness around our choices and around the things that we're doing to support our health and wellness and keep us from sabotaging ourselves? We go over her 4 steps to implementing new habits, which she teaches to all of her coaching clients. And we also talk about her concept of how to spiral up versus spiraling down. In other words, instead of diving deep into the negative spiral, the self-sabotage, how do we stop that momentum and start spiraling back upwards? This is a really great conversation with Elizabeth. If you struggle with implementing your new healthy habits to support your autoimmune journey, or if you are just on a health kick, but you keep falling off the wagon with your nutritional choices, or you struggle with overeating, this is a great conversation for you to listen to because there are so many good actionable tips and good mindset shifts, especially in this episode, that I know will help you as you go through the daily process of implementing new health habits for yourself. I would love to ask you before we dive in to give us a like and subscribe to this podcast. This is just a one woman show around here, and I have so many amazing people on this podcast, and we talk about so many life changing things that it's so important to me to get this message, all these messages out further. And I can only do that with your help. So just a simple subscribe or a like and a comment on whatever platform you're listening in on really makes a huge difference in the algorithms and boosting these episodes out further. So I thank you ahead of time. If you could do that for me, I really appreciate it. And now let's dive into our chat with Elizabeth. Elizabeth Dall, welcome to the Health Bridge podcast. I'm really looking forward to our conversation today. I know it's going to bring just a ton of value to all of our listeners. So thank you for being here.
Thank you for having me. I'm excited for this conversation.
Yeah, I'm going to let's just dive right in. You have something on your website that really struck me. It says, you spent so long fighting your body, wishing it looked or felt different, that you're not even sure what peace with it would feel like anymore. And I think that's really the perfect starting point to dive into this conversation because with autoimmune conditions, as many of my listeners have, uh, we're all dealing with unique situations that are kind of, all encompassing, from mind struggles, body struggles, spiritual struggles. And we're not at peace, right? We're not at peace in our bodies because we're told our bodies are attacking ourselves, and it's affecting us on, like I said, so many different levels. So I guess dive in wherever you want with this. I know your specialty is more on helping women deal with weight issues and overeating, but I think a lot of the same principles that you teach will transfer over into autoimmunity. And so, how do we start basically looking towards finding peace within our bodies wherever we're at in this whole mind, body, spirit spectrum?
Yeah, that's a great question. And it really comes down to the root. I mean, we do talk a lot about habits and health and, relationship with food. And it starts with your relationship with your body, always. And when we have a messy relationship with our body, then it trickles into creating a messy relationship with food, with exercise, and all of that. And so, one of the things that I love to teach is teaching women to start to create a relationship with their body. We don't often think of it in that way, right? We don't think of creating that relationship with our body like we would someone else, a significant other, a friend, a spouse, whatever. What do you do to build that relationship? You speak kind words to them. You spend time with them. You work with them. You do all these things in this relationship. And when you do those things, it thrives. That relationship gets better, right? When we ignore the person or we speak unkind words or we don't pay attention to them, we don't value them, that relationship starts to crumble. Well, that's the same exact thing as it is with our bodies. When we can start to learn that this relationship is worth nurturing, that's really the jumping off point for creating change in our bodies.
I can relate to this whole building the relationship, and that when I look back at my journey, before I even knew that I had autoimmune conditions going on, I had a lot of gut issues and I would get super bloated, super bloated. Sometimes I could eat, this meal and I'd be totally fine. And 3 days later, I could eat that same meal and get bloated out to looking like I was 6 months pregnant. And I just could not find rhyme or reason to it. And I talked so much crap to myself about it. You know, I was angry. I was upset. I was embarrassed. I couldn't understand why my body was doing this to me. And looking back, the words that I said to myself, I would never say that to a girlfriend. I would never treat somebody else that way. And yet I just let at myself with all of this negativity. And so I think that building that relationship, like you said, like you're building a relationship with somebody else, is huge. And I actually don't know if I've ever heard of somebody speak to it in that exact sense. So I think that's super powerful.
Yeah.
Um, what is, I mean, how do we start? How does somebody start with that? What are the
Yeah.
first couple steps?
Well, the first step
That's a
really
big
is
pattern to change.
yes, it is.
Yeah.
That's why we start with small, simple steps, right? And as you were kind of talking, the one thing that I want to validate for anyone listening is that emotions are valid. Okay. It's normal to feel things like my body's not working the way it used to. My body's not working the way someone else's works. It's not working the way I want it to. And that can be really frustrating, right? Having something that feels extra. And so I really want, to make sure that we start with that, is that these emotions are real and we don't have to push them off or um, try to ignore them, but we can learn to work with them. And so, yeah, you may have to take a different approach. And we've kind of talked a little bit. My work in the autoimmune community really started, I worked in a multiple sclerosis clinic. And it was very interesting for me to learn as someone without autoimmune about someone with autoimmune and the different approach that they may have to take and things that change. And the truth is we all have some form of that, right? We all have some form of this is going to be different for me and I have to work at this a little bit differently. And so I would probably say that's a good first step, is coming to peace, just like that relationship, right? As soon as we're building that relationship, it allows us to come to a little bit of peace that my journey might look a little different to supporting my body. And that's okay because I have a relationship with it. And that relationship means it is worthy of being nurtured and nourished, whatever that looks like for me. And those words can be so powerful, right? When we step into the mindset of nurture and nourish in whatever way that looks like, I would I would suggest that be the first step for anyone that feels frustrated in their body, that feels maybe overwhelmed at some of the choices they need to make or things that they need to change, or when their body is not doing what it should be doing, even though they're following the rules and all of that, is that, okay, this is my unique body. We're working together, just like a relationship isn't perfect, right? We have to do things to improve it and to change and to work on it. Sometimes you fight and you have to heal that fight with communication and things like that. It's the same conversation here with your body. This is frustrating. I feel this. And I like to tell people, name the emotion. Hey, I know you, your anger. I feel this anger, right? Name that emotion. And then because we've created that relationship, or at least we're committed to the relationship, we can then have a nurturing, nourishing conversation to say, okay, let's keep going. What does this look like next?
I like that approach of the long-term relationship because we can't get out of this relationship. We're stuck with this relationship for life. So, yeah, it's almost like we need to go to marriage counseling sometimes, but with our own self to heal, like you're saying, and to restructure how we think about things or restructure our patterns. And I like that vision of creating the relationship in that way. Um, where do I want to go from here? I guess so. Starting to build that relationship, we're nurturing, we're recognizing the emotions. We are maybe taking a moment when we recognize those emotions to acknowledge, and that kind of helps us respond differently as opposed to just reacting. So I used to just be in complete reactionary mode. You know, my stomach is bloated and I'm freaking out about it because maybe I'm supposed to go out with some friends and I look like I'm 6 months pregnant. And so now that outfit I had picked out ain't going to look good on me, and I'm freaking out and I'm pissed off at my body. So now with the mindset that I have, I can recognize like, okay, my body's sending me a message. Yes, I'm upset, but I'm not going to indulge in that emotion because I recognize that there's a meaning behind the way my body reacted to whatever food I ate. Take a breath. Okay, what can I look at moving forward? So, where do we start with that next step?
Yeah. Mindfulness. Starting to create habits that support your body with mindfulness. So what you're doing is you're starting to transition into, okay, I feel this way. I'm committed to a better outcome, right? Now I need to step into, I need to make some choices that fit the needs of my own body. And I believe that every single one of us was born with that gift. I mean, think about a little baby. They know when they're hungry, when they're full, even a toddler, right? Don't, they'll tell you when they're hungry and they'll push the food away when they're full. And at some point in life, we were taught to either suppress or ignore those feelings. And it could be a doctor that said, "Hey, go off all these foods to support your autoimmune your autoimmune condition." Or it could be, oh, someone else said I shouldn't eat this, or right? And so we have all of these rules that have come in, and there's probably some good things to them, right? If gluten is an inflammatory factor for you, then we do have to work on having a relationship maybe without it or something. But being able to connect with your body in that way of saying, okay, I am capable of knowing and meeting the needs of my own body is power. And from there, I can make some decisions and kind of take notes, right? With autoimmunity, there's a lot of trial and error on things where you may have to try this thing and, oh, that worked for me. Okay, I may keep trying it. I could say this for most people, that there is a lot of trial and error in our health journey. We go through seasons of life that may shift, right? Maybe we have pregnancy, or I was just on a call with a woman who's going through menopause and her life is shifting, her body is shifting, and she's having to shift her habits and her mindset to support kind of a different approach than she's taken before. And so it's the same idea, is when I can step into this mindfulness and remind myself that I am capable of meeting those needs, then what we do is we start connecting with the cues in our body, and we can start listening. Okay, what are you telling me and what do I need to do?
And so we're listening to what do we need to do? But then you have to start doing the thing.
Yes.
So talk to me about that, because habit building can be a challenge, especially with autoimmune. But I think probably this spans across the board. But I know with autoimmune, it's like you don't know how to predict necessarily one day to the next how you're going to be doing physically. So you might be feeling pretty decent. So you start, say, a workout routine, or you start, maybe you meal prep for the week or something. And the next few days, all of a sudden you're chronic fatigued, you're down, you can't get back up and continue that workout routine that day, or meal prep again for the next week. So how do we start to get that stuff in the routine? Really quick, Holly B here. I just wanted to interrupt the podcast to ask you for a quick favor. Can you take just a moment to like and subscribe to this podcast on whatever platform you are listening in on? It makes a world of a difference. And the reach of this podcast, it takes like literally under 10 seconds. So go do that right now. Thank you so much. I really appreciate it. And now back to the episode.
Yeah. And I think this would be a really great time to discuss kind of what I teach as a 4-step strategy to help you implement these no matter what body you have, no matter what lifestyle you have. But we have to start with this: meet yourself where you are. That's the most important thing. Everybody is on a different journey, and you're on a different journey at different times in your life. So when you want to get started, don't start 10 steps ahead of yourself. Meet yourself where you are. From there, these are the 4 things that really encompass a wholeness or a complete health journey. And I like to tell people, first things first, start with movement. Most people can move in some capacity. You may not be doing CrossFit or running a marathon, but can you do a simple yoga routine or a stretch or some breathing or go on a walk, meeting yourself where you are, you get to choose what that looks like. Movement has significant power in helping us not only feel better, but also feel better in our bodies. If you want to feel better in your body, move, period. That's going to be the first step. And there are all different kinds of modalities of exercise that you can do that will support different things in your body, right? If you are looking for more mental and emotional health, maybe yoga might be a good movement, right? If you're looking for strength, maybe you need to incorporate strength training. If you're looking for endurance, go do some cardio and then build from there. You meet yourself where you are and you build from there. The second step is mindful eating. Paying attention to what you're eating and listening to your body. How do I feel? How do I want to feel? Right? We're chaotic eaters. We grab and go a lot. And I think the autoimmune community is probably a little better at this than most people because just naturally you have to be. But being mindful about what you're eating and how it's making you feel helps kind of solidify that connection between your brain and your body, right? Okay, I recognize this, or I know my hunger cues, I know my fullness cues, I know what satisfies me. And when I know that, I can eat according to the way my body needs to. The third step is having a nutrition strategy. In order to utilize the body's cues, we need to get the right nutrients for our bodies. And so I always tell people, try to balance some proteins, carbohydrates, and fats at each meal. So having a strategy where you're not just going and grabbing a bagel because you're hungry, but rather saying, what's going to actually support my body? That's going to help support what your body specifically needs and making sure you're getting the right nutrients in your body. And then the fourth one is keep showing up. Just keep working on it. I like to kind of use the word endurance, right? This is a lifelong pursuit of our health and management of chronic conditions. And if we can learn that we meet ourselves where we are and things are going to have to adjust and we just keep showing up in those ways, movement, mindful eating, and nutrition strategy, then you'll be able to support your body long term.
And I think there's another thing to add to this too, which is those first steps that you laid out, it sort of encompasses a whole mindset shift around the journey. And I think we have stuck in our heads, whether, I don't know if this is from society drilling it in this way, but that change is hard, that health is hard. I mean, especially with autoimmune, it does feel very hard because your body's not functioning, quote unquote, normally, right? Um, and so we're called autoimmune warriors, meaning we're constantly fighting this battle. But maybe it's not about this fighting to get into this new routine, this like drill sergeant attitude about it. Maybe it's like releasing a little bit. Maybe it's releasing the expectations of how we need to go about this, releasing the like perfectionism of I got to go all in, or I have to like do this perfect or else it's not going to work for me. I like to say just focus on doing 1% better each day. We're choosing one thing to focus on rather than the whole gamut of, well, I need to get to bed by this time so I can sleep this many hours, and I need to, um, have 3 perfect meals a day. But I don't even know what that means for me because I still don't know what my trigger foods are. And, I have to take all these supplements, but there's so many, how do I know which ones, and it's overwhelming. And a lot of women in the autoimmune community tend to have a perfectionism background. And we also have a tendency to take care of everybody else first besides ourselves. So there's that other component to it. Um, And so I think, when we're going on these health journeys, we have to be able to relinquish control and just focus on one piece at a time, which you sort of laid out there in your 4 steps. But can you speak to that as well?
Yeah. I have my own definition of sabotage, and I think it's the expectation of perfection.
Oh, I like that.
The expectation of perfection will lead to sabotage. I want to be bold and say 100% of the time. We probably have this, and again, you speak to, a unique set of circumstances, and there's value in that. And recognizing that things may look a little different for you than mainstream. And that's okay. And I think it really goes back to identity. I teach the women that I teach, I always remind them you are a woman of wellness. And that looks different for everyone. And so if you create that identity, I'm a woman of wellness who, you get to identify what that is. You get to define what your wellness looks like. And there's so much noise, I call it outside noise, that comes in that tells us this is the ideal, this is what it's supposed to be. And sometimes it comes from a well-meaning friend or a doctor even, right? And sometimes it's good information, and other times, sometimes we have to learn how to filter. And a little bit of my own personal journey, I don't have a diagnosed autoimmune, but after I had babies, each baby, something weird happened with my body, and I'd have to like go figure out what's going on. And so I went to like a doctor, and they put me on a lot of, I think it was like heartburn medication because I was struggling with sore throat and dry cough. And anyway, it took me many years to kind of find a more natural approach doctor. And he said, go off gluten and dairy. He took my blood work, and it was like, if green is good and red is bad, gluten and dairy were red. And that was the first I'd ever heard of this. It was very kind of new to me of, oh, okay. And at first I was so desperate to feel good that I did it, right? But then I eliminated all the foods, and, it didn't last very long. Even though I felt good off of it, I had to start finding kind of my own happy middle. So I had to make a decision that I am mostly gluten and dairy free, but I don't have celiac. Okay. So, those are certain things I know that there are some extreme needs. But I did have to have a conversation with myself to say, like, it's okay that, the majority of the time when I cook meals, I eat this way. This is how I eat. But that doesn't stop me from being able to go out to a restaurant. Like, I'm allowed to enjoy some things in moderation. I understand how it makes my body feel. And I've learned, it's taken years to kind of learn this. And um, it really is about, I don't even know exactly where I was going with that, but basically kind of looking at the noise, looking at the suggestions that you're given, and reminding yourself, I am capable of knowing and meeting the needs of my own body. And from there, you can make choices that are unique to your body.
And I think to continue on your story there, where you now know that you can make the decision to have the dairy or to have some gluten, it's really, I think once we can identify the triggers and how they affect us, then we can make those decisions in a more informed way. But we do have to cut things out first, especially at least with autoimmune. We kind of have to cut these things out first so we can figure out where that level is. But then once you figure that out, you can take things on a case by case basis. And maybe it's a holiday or you have family visiting in town, and indulging in that dairy or indulging in that gluten at that moment is adding to quality of life, not taking away from it. So we can make those decisions. And also, with our mindset while we are indulging, what is the emotion behind it? right? Like you were referring to earlier. And are we doing this out of desperation of some sort, or because we're not feeling good and emotionally we want to feel better, so we choose to indulge at that point? Or is it we are truly enjoying a moment with family and friends, and this bread is part of that meal, and I'm going to enjoy a piece of that bread?
Yeah, it goes back to that mindful eating practice, right? I have a boundary with food. I don't love the word rules, but I always like to I think boundaries are a little more gentle to say when I eat an indulgence food, I'm mindful about it because my experience in the past has been if I make a plate of cookies and I just pass it in the kitchen, I'll just grab one. I'll just grab one. And it's very mindless, like, oh, that looks good. And that's my natural tendency. And so I have kind of a barrier in place that says, yeah, if you want to enjoy that, that's great. Do it mindfully and enjoy it and experience it because that turns food from emotion that leads to like guilt and shame. There's good emotions, right? Enjoyment of it, but emotions that lead to guilt and shame. I shouldn't have done that. I have no self control to, yeah, I actually really enjoyed this. I am fine with one instead of seven, and I'm satisfied. And this is not a medical opinion or or anything. This is just my opinion. Um, I think you would be more likely to have less potential flares if you knew that there was a little bit of that wiggle room for yourself instead of feeling like you're on the extreme and then you can't have it. So then when you have it, you're like, oh, I might as well just keep going and I'm going to lose control. And I've been there. I've done that before. And you know, my doctor said, don't gluten is a all or nothing and dairy is dose dependent. That's what I've kind of learned. And I had to process my thoughts about that because it made me think, okay, gluten is a no never. And I had and this may be different for everyone, but I had to make that discussion of, okay, I recognize that this is the science behind it maybe, right? This is what it does to my body. And I also can learn. And I've learned that, you know, if I eat a little bit of it, I'm usually okay. If I consistently eat gluten, I get a lot of brain fog and I get a lot of my joints bug me. And I've noticed that, but it's taken some time to learn that. And it's also taken some overeating on gluten to learn that, right? Like I had to learn some lessons. And so now I know how to support my body in my lifestyle. And that might not be right for everyone. I don't want to say like, you know, don't do what your doctor says, but recognize that when we get stuck in that all or nothing thinking, sometimes it leads to that sabotage, and that's not helpful either.
No, it isn't. And I've certainly gone in my cycles. I mean, I still have to relearn things, and I still have to test boundaries sometimes. And that's, that's okay. It is what it is. I've certainly found for myself, I am very reactive to gluten. Um, but I can handle occasionally long fermented sourdough bread.
Yeah.
And as long as I'm mindful about it and I don't eat the whole loaf and I just eat, a slice or two every once in a while, I'm usually fine with that. Uh, but I did have an incident over Thanksgiving this past year. I was ordering a gluten-free pie for Thanksgiving dinner. And this particular bakery is not a gluten-free bakery, but they do long fermented doughs for their breads and for some of their other baked goods. And I've tried their breads before. I've been okay. But she said, oh, we have these croissants that are made out of the same fermented dough. That should be fine for you if you're fine with our bread. So I went for it, and I don't know if it got cross contaminated or what. Who knows? It was the most delicious thing, and I scarfed that baby down, like, because I haven't had anything on like that in over 10 years. But man, I felt it immediately. And it took about 2 months to get out of my system. So, sometimes we have to push the boundaries a little bit. And that was definitely more of an emotional choice. Oh man, I want that taste and that texture and that flavor. But I paid for it. And I knew that that was a possibility going in because I know it's not a gluten free bakery. So, we have to pick and choose and redirect if needed, then that's okay. And that's kind of the point, is that we shouldn't get too down on ourselves as long as we're making these decisions with awareness, I think, rather than just straight emotions.
Yeah, and I love that you said that's the point, right? Is that we're always going to be adapting and adjusting. And if you know that you're meeting yourself where you are, then you can learn how to adapt and adjust. And what works now might not work in the future. And what you try today might not work tomorrow. And it's okay, because I think it provides us opportunities to like make that relationship better and better and better, right? We're improving on that relationship. We're constantly learning, okay, this works for me, this doesn't. And it helps us become that best version of ourselves. And, beyond just health, it 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 creates a an attitude of growth, and recognizing like I am capable of doing hard things and supporting my body in the way that it needs to be supported. And I can do this. And I think, you mentioned earlier the word warriors. And I love the feelings and the emotions that that brings, right? I'm a warrior, and that means I keep showing up, and I keep making the best choices I know how at the time, and I know that I can shift and change and adjust as I learn.
I like that spin on the word warrior because I tend to take more of a negative connotation with it, of that we're always fighting and fighting and fighting. And I don't like that energy, of the constant fight, but I love that spin on it. So thank you for sharing that. Um, Also, what you were saying earlier was how things can shift. So maybe you try this thing and this works for you for a while, and then, maybe you have to shift and adjust with, speaking specifically of dietary ways of eating. And I've certainly found for myself, and I invite other people to do this, is to experiment with the way you approach nutrition. Because just because, again, you're told that this is the one way that you should eat, say, for example, an autoimmune protocol diet, or being vegetarian, or eating the Mediterranean diet, which is commonly recommended for people with autoimmune. Try it. Absolutely try it. See how it goes. It may or may not be the right thing for you. I mean, when I coach women, I'm not dogmatic about a specific way of eating, because I myself have experimented with many different ways of eating, from being largely plant-based to going full carnivore. I felt better going full carnivore than I ever did on plant-based. So, it's just and in doing that, by the way, I definitely healed something, because now I have a different relationship with dairy, and I hadn't been able to drink a glass of milk, for example, or have ice cream since I was pretty young, and I can 100% handle that now. So things can change, things that you didn't think could ever change. I never thought that that was something that could change, and it has. So don't be afraid to step out of the boundaries sometimes, and try things out. Just do it mindfully and with awareness.
Yeah, and it kind of goes back to that mindset shift of warriors. You might be following a particular diet for health, and sometimes the mindset for dieting is restriction. And the reality is it's actually opening up maybe some more opportunities if we can switch that mindset to, hey, I'm looking for a diet, right? Like we don't have to say diet in the terms of weight loss, but I'm looking for a nutrition strategy that will support my body. And I can look at it as, look, I get to try these things rather than on the other side, I have to restrict these things. And I don't know what it is. It must be very human nature. That's the best thing I can think of is that we go toward that path easier, right? Oh, you just told me not to eat gluten, dairy, all these things. But let's say you research the Mediterranean diet and you look and you go, look at the amazing foods on this list that I can have and enjoy. And I can satisfy any need that maybe gluten and dairy would bring me with this. And how cool is that? Isn't that such a cool mindset shift to be able to say, and it's not about restriction, which, it takes some practice to work on that. Okay, that's not overnight. But what can I incorporate and add that makes me feel good? That, I've been trying to teach my kids about healthy eating without it's very interesting. Kids are interesting, and it's my area of expertise is not in childhood relationship with food, but I've been trying to teach them like, look how colorful all these, fruits and vegetables are. That's so cool. Those are real colors, and then teaching them like our bodies want that means it has lots of nutrition in it, lots of nutrients, lots of vitamins in it because it's deep colors. And when we start to shift, like I can even just fill up my body. I'm like, oh, I want fruits and vegetables rather than like a piece of bread because it makes us excited to give our body something that really it needs. And you may need to have a little education on what foods are really good for you and what do certain foods do. So then you can say, oh, I see where this fits and I want to give those foods to my body.
Hey, I just wanted to jump in here and interrupt the program for just a hot minute. You know that I'm so passionate about this podcast, but what I'm also really passionate about is helping women with lupus minimize their symptoms, boost their energy so that they can indulge in life again. So if you are a woman who is struggling with lupus, who is sick and tired of being sick and tired, who's struggling to manage your flares, if you're finding that your lupus symptoms are just really getting in the way of you being able to live your life the way you want to, I feel you. I've been there myself and I felt the same way. And what I've found is that there are a certain set of health fundamentals that once applied, will support you in your foundational health. They will support you in building and maintaining that energy, minimizing flares, and allowing you to, again, indulge in life and follow your passions. So, if that is something that you are interested in creating for yourself, let's jump on a call together. I will walk you through the process that I use with my clients to get them from sick and tired to strong foundation of health by implementing my health bridge protocol. If this is something you're interested in chatting more about, I would love to talk to you. Apply for a free clarity call with me, and I look forward to getting to know you soon. And now back to the episode. Definitely. And I had kind of an interesting sort of a reverse of what you just said, where and I love what you were just saying, but I'm a total foodie.
I love it.
I grew up in Napa. Like I can't help it. It's where I came from, right? Food is very important up there. And so I forever was of the mindset like I my food it has to be healthy. I have to have like five different tastes and textures. Like I need lots of vegetables. I need this. Meat is totally fine, but like it's got to be this full thing. And so when I was doing research and I decided to actually try going animal based and then carnivore, that is technically a very restrictive diet. You're cutting out virtually all of the plant foods, in addition to all the grains and everything else, the nuts and the seeds. It was actually good for me to retrain my brain that maybe like I can actually be satisfied with just a steak on my plate. And I don't need all of the other things to satisfy the emotional stuff behind what I'm eating. So there is, like, I was tying in a lot of emotional stuff to having a plate full of all these different things. And trading myself off of that made me actually really appreciate more just the one or two things that were on my plate and really indulge in that and respect the nutrients that were in just that one thing
Yeah.
versus needing like 5 different things to give me the same nutrients.
Yeah, and all of our bodies are different. I think everybody's probably gonna respond differently. And, we're told fruits and vegetables are good for us, and I'll never forget I had a client once. She was allergic to all vegetables. I kid you not. Just potatoes. She could only eat potatoes. And if someone were to say, "Hey, fruits and vegetables, or I guess vegetables are good for you," she'd be like, "No, actually they will kill me," because I think she had a pretty like severe allergy or something. And it was a good reminder to me that there are guidelines, right? And we know the nutrition of things. And also, there may be a better path for you that you may have to discover, and that's okay. And it doesn't mean that we're ignoring nutrition advice, right? But we're learning what our body needs. And everyone's a little bit different there.
Exactly. Yeah, it's a unique journey for all of us. And that's why I just invite anybody listening to just be open-minded about it and um listen to your thought patterns, listen to your emotions behind your choices and be aware of those before you make your decisions. Are you making a decision on changing something out of fear? Doesn't mean the fear isn't legitimate. If you're being told you're severely allergic to gluten, there might be some fear behind, oh God, I got to get that out of my diet. But be mindful of that as you are making the shifts, right?
Exactly.
Yeah. Um, we've talked about a lot, and I know we have to wrap up, but is there anything that we haven't chatted about that you want to bring up or any kind of last thoughts that you want to leave with our listeners?
Here's one. So one thing that I teach the women in my programs is the concept or the principle of spiraling up. You are going to have times in life where things didn't go as planned. You'll overeat. Even someone with a good relationship with food or good habits, we're going to have times where we overeat or where we get into a rut or something. And it's really easy. I wanna picture a spring, like a spiral spring, and it's really easy to spiral down out of control, right? Like, "Oh, I already did this, so I might as well keep going," or, "I haven't done this, so I'm just gonna keep not doing this," and we spiral out of control, and one thing that I always tell women is pay attention to that pivotal moment. There's a pivotal moment where you can either spiral out of control because you made a choice, or you can say, "What can I do? What is one thing I can do to spiral up? One rung," is what I say. Just how can I choose to spiral up one thing? Could that mean I'm going to go on a walk today, even if I haven't been consistent with exercise at all? Or I just ate the whole bag of cookies and I know I'm going to feel miserable. How can I spiral up? I'm going to make sure with dinner, I have the food that serves me. And I'm just going to start there. I don't have to look 30 days down the road or 7 years down the road. In this moment, what is one choice I can make to spiral up? And I think that helps us continue making those choices each and every day.
I love that. That goes along with the whole 1% better each day or what's one decision I can make today that
Yeah.
will support my health. Love that. Where can everybody find you, Elizabeth?
Yeah. So since we're on a podcast, I have my own podcast called the Woman of Wellness Podcast. We talk all about relationship with food, relationship with body, healthy habits, the mindset, as well as the behavior. So we really do both. We get at the root, kind of like what we did here today. And then if you're struggling and you really want to create those healthy habits within your capacity, we always meet you where you are. I have a healthy habits membership. It's called our Women's Wellness Hub. And I teach you how to start incorporating those 4 steps that I mentioned: movement, mindful eating, nutrition strategy, and endurance, or keep showing up, to be able to do it within your lifestyle and your needs. And I teach you how to implement those so it becomes a habit. So that's probably my favorite thing. We have women in all different areas of life and um, different needs, right? Different approaches. And so we have a really good group in there. And then if you want to learn more, I've got my website, awomanofwellness.com.
Lovely. Thank you so much for being here and just pouring out so much good information for our listeners. Thank you again.
Thanks.
I love what all the tips that Elizabeth dropped on us in this episode, but I especially love how she talked about creating a new identity with yourself. And that is like the ultimate mindset shift, right? When we can shift from identifying with a woman who struggles or a woman who doesn't have good eating habits or a woman who always sabotages themselves with their health goals or a woman who is at odds with her body in an autoimmune struggle, somebody who is just constantly fighting her body and always trying to get back to health. If we can shift that identity, as she says, to I am a woman of wellness who fill in the blank. I am a woman of wellness who listens to her body and adjusts as needed. I am a woman of wellness who has a healthy relationship with food. I am a woman of wellness who is making great strides in her health journey. Try some of those statements on for size. See how much different that feels from how you currently identify yourselves as within your health journey. And and stick with that. Stick with that for a while. Write it down daily in your journal. Put it on post-it notes where you can see it to remind yourself. Anytime you struggle and you go through that emotional trigger of I'm not good enough or I'm not perfect enough or I'm never going to be able to do this, catch that thought when it starts. Catch it. Pause and take a breath and reword everything, right? Reword it for yourself so that the energy of the new thought pattern starts to kick in. And we can slowly retrain our brain to go to the new thought patterns when we struggle instead of the constant sabotage of the old ones. So instead of, I made a misstep in my nutrition today, but I look forward to a healthy meal the next time I sit down to eat. Could be as simple as that. And having some grace and forgiveness for yourself on this path is so important because nobody's perfect. As much as we try to be, it's impossible. This journey is full of hills and valleys. So let's just be kind to ourselves on the path and work on those mindset shifts, work on nurturing your relationship with yourself, work on your new identity as a woman of wellness. And just in doing those simple mindset shifts, you might find that the things that you're already doing will work better, will have more of a positive effect for you. And as that starts to happen, you're going to want to do them more and more. And it makes the habits so much easier to stick to. Make sure that you download. I put a link in the show notes for you to download Elizabeth's free mindful eating meditation. She kindly offers that to you to help with your mindfulness around food and around your food choices. And I just downloaded it myself, so I will start implementing that as well. But I'd love for you to join me in that and be sure to subscribe to her podcast. All of those links are down in the show notes. And also you are struggling currently with your mindset around your health journey, that is something that I work with my clients very deeply on as well, because changing my mindset is truly what started changing my health journey and my life overall. So, if you would like to chat some more about that and what that might look like for you, if you want to get some help in this process, I'd love to jump on a free call with you. The link to apply for a call is also in the show notes. And I really do look forward to having a conversation with you, getting to know what it is that you're struggling with, and giving you some tools that you can take away right away that could start to shift everything for you. So, thank you so much for listening in to this episode with Elizabeth. And I look forward to seeing you again on the next episode of the Health Bridge podcast.